Okay, so far we've talked about slope-intercept form and point-slope form, and today we're going to learn about standard form, okay? And so our objective is I can represent an equation using standard form. I want you guys from now on, I'm not going to do it for you anymore, to write your learner's question, okay? Because it's supposed to be you're the learner, I'm the teacher. So if I keep writing them for you, then you're not coming up with your own questions, okay? So, we're going to go back to our foldable that we started creating on point slope form, okay, and we're going to flip to the standard form, okay. This should say at the top, if yours is missing like mine, it should be 2x minus 3y equals 6, okay. So if you don't have that, you need to make sure that that's written in because I had a hole in mine. So there are two options for how to graph, okay. And option one is, I'm going to pop down here. Option one is slope-intercept form. Okay, is to put it into slope-intercept form. Put into slope-intercept form. Okay, or you can find the intercepts. Okay, and I'll teach you how to do that. Teach you how to do both ways. Okay, so standard form looks like this. Okay, and I'm actually going to give you some things to recognize it by, okay, and then we'll graph. We're going to kind of go backwards, okay. So x and y are on the same side of the equal sign, okay. So x and y have to be on the same side of the equal sign, whereas before x and y have always been on opposite sides, okay. The coefficients of x and y are integers, which means no fractions and decimals, and we will rewrite that in a minute on our notes page, okay. And there is a constant on the other side of the equal sign. Okay, we want to have that constant on the other side. Okay, so standard form, the actual standard form, the way that it looks, is AX plus BY equals C. Now, the A, the B, and the C don't really have any meaning other than, like when we think of y equals mx plus b, we think of m being the slope and b being the y-intercept. A, B, and C here are just coefficients. They don't really have any bearing on our line at all. Okay, but standard form, we're going to talk about what it's useful for in a minute, okay? So back up to this graph, okay? There's two different options. We can put it into slope-intercept form, so let's do that. Okay, so if I want 2x minus 3y equals 6 to be in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, I need to get the y all by itself. Okay, so we haven't really talked about how to do this, but I'm going to show you, okay? We're getting y all by itself, so right now it's not. Okay, so I need to move this 2x out of the way because it's being a problem. So I can subtract 2x from both sides. Okay, so then I still have negative 3y. Make sure you keep that negative. Equals negative 2x plus 6. I'm just writing the negative 2x first because that's like what slope-intercept form is. Okay, and then if I still want to get the y by itself, I'm going to have to divide everything by negative 3. Every single thing. Okay, so on the right side, you have to divide both by that negative 3. Okay, so then this goes away, and I'm left with y equals, well, I have a negative divided by a negative, so that gives me positive 2/3 x, and then 6 divided by negative 3 gives me negative 2. Okay, so I can do it that way, okay, or I can do option 2. This was slope-intercept form. That's what this one was, slope-intercept form. Or I can do option number 2, which is find the intercepts. Now remember, intercepts, okay, are where the other variable is 0, okay? So other variable equals 0. So if I have 2x minus 3y equals 6, and I'm solving for the x-intercept, okay, well, if I'm solving for the x-intercept, that means the other variable, y, is 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y, Because remember, if it's the x-intercept, that's here. So here's all my x values. So if it's on this line, the y value is 0 because I haven't gone up or down. I've just gone left and right, not up and down if I'm on the x-axis. Okay, so this whole x-axis, everywhere along there, y is equal to 0. Okay, so, well, 3 times 0 is 0. So then that would go away. And then I'd have 2x equals 6. Okay, and then you can divide by 2. And x equals 3. Okay. Okay, and then we could find the y-intercept. So now x is going to be 0 because on my y-axis, my x is equal to 0 because I haven't gone left and right. I'm only moving up and down. Okay, so 2 times 0 minus 3y equals 6. So that goes away. Then I have negative 3y equals 6. And then to solve for y, I divide by negative 3, and I get negative 2. So I can do either way. And if you look, your y-intercept is the same here and here. It's the same. Okay, so I have negative 2, and then I'm gonna look, and I'm gonna say, okay, well I know my x-intercept is 3. Okay, so does that fall with my 2/3? Well, if I start at my negative 2 using my slope-intercept form, and I go up 2 and right 3, up 2, right 3, there I land on my y-intercept, or my x-intercept, I'm sorry. I'm going to do it one more time, up 2 over 3, just to have 3 points, okay? And I'm going to draw my line. Now, you won't have to do this, but it's important that you know how to graph just in case they ask you to, but I don't believe they will, okay? Okay, so now we're going to flip to the notes, okay? So what is standard form? Well, it's that ax plus by equals c. Okay, and there's a couple things that have to be true, okay? A, b, and c are all integers, which means, okay, because of this, I can't have fractions or decimals. Okay. Okay, because they have to be integers, remember integers are positive and negative whole numbers. Okay, that means that I can't have fractions or decimals in here, which means we're going to have to learn how to get rid of them, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. The next thing that has to be true is A cannot be negative. Okay, it's very important that you remember A cannot be negative. B and C can be negative. Okay, and A is always the coefficient of x. So whatever the coefficient of x is, it cannot be negative. Okay, and then the other thing is A and B can't both be 0. Okay, because then you would have 0 over here equals something, and that's not true. Okay, so standard form is useful to help us find combinations of things, combinations of items. Okay, so say, like I say, jeans cost $10 and shirts cost $15. You have $150. What are the different combinations of jeans and shirts that you could buy? Okay, that's what standard form is good for. Okay, it also can be a little bit easier to graph sometimes because you have those 2 points and then you just draw a line through them and it's great. Okay, so example number 1 says transform the equations into standard form. So we need to get them into ax plus by equals c. Okay, so example number 1a, okay, so I need to move this over here. Well, in order to move it, I'm going to have to subtract the 2/3 x from both sides. Okay, so it's like I'm solving an equation. I'm putting it into ax plus by equals c instead of solving for a variable. Okay, so this goes away on this side. I have negative 2/3 x plus y equals negative 1. Well, we have 2 problems right now. Okay. A, B, and C are not all integers. Right now, this is not an integer, okay? And it's also negative, so that's a problem, okay? So what you can do, okay, is, and I'm going to write this out into the question side, okay? If there is a fraction, multiply the whole equation, the whole thing, by the denominator. Okay, because when I multiply by the denominator, it eliminates the denominator. Oops, I'm sorry, you cannot see that. So if there is a fraction, multiply the whole equation by the denominator. If you don't do that, it's not going to get rid of it. Okay, so the other thing is I have a negative here, so in order to get rid of a negative, I have to multiply by a negative. Okay, so we're going to multiply by a negative to get rid of a negative. And I'm sorry that I wrote in the questions box, but that's okay. Okay, so I have a negative, so I'm definitely going to have to multiply by a negative. And then the denominator of this fraction is 3. Okay, so I have to multiply everything by -3. So when I multiply this one by -3, I'm actually going to write it out. -3 times -2/3 x plus -3 times y equals -3 times -1. So every single thing, it's like I took this and distributed it to every single thing on the inside of that parentheses. Okay, everything got it. Okay, so when I multiply -3 times -2/3, well, the negatives go away. And then the 3 divided by 3 becomes 1, so this just becomes 2x. Okay? And then I'm adding a negative, so that's just going to be subtraction. And then 3 times y is 3y. And then -3 times -1 is 3. Okay? So that is your standard form of that equation. Okay? Okay, let's do B now that we've got the ropes down a little bit. Okay? So on this one, I need to add the 1/2 x to both sides because I need to get the x on the left. Remember, they're on the same side of the equation. Okay, so I have 1/2 x plus y equals -3. Remember that negative was in front of that 3. Okay, and then I don't have a negative, so I don't have to multiply by a negative, but I do have a fraction, so I need to multiply by the denominator, which is 2. Okay, so I'm just multiplying everything by 2. This one's a little bit easier, so I'm not going to write it out. 2 times 1/2, well, 2 halves is just 1, so that's just x. And then 2 times y is 2y. And then 2 times -3 is -6. Okay, so there's your standard form. Okay. Okay, and then you have something that's in point slope form. So we're going to first turn this into not necessarily slope intercept form, but I'm going to distribute this 1/2 to both sides, this 1/2 to, not to both sides, but to the x and the 4. So I have y minus 9 equals, well, 1/2 times x is 1/2 x, and then 1/2 of 4 is 2. Okay, now I need to get all the variables on one side and the constants on the other. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So then I have y equals 1/2 x plus 7. Okay, so there's slope intercept form. And then I'm going to subtract that 1/2 x from both sides because I need the x and the y on the same side. Okay. And then we're going to look back over here. Okay, do I have a negative? Okay. And this is only for a. Okay, only for the coefficient a, for the negative, because everything else can be negative. Okay. So I'm going to have to multiply by a negative, and then what's the denominator of 1/2? 2. Okay, so I'm going to have to multiply by a -2. So -2 times -1/2 would be positive 1x. Okay, -2 times y would be -2y. And then -2 times 7 would be -14. Okay, so there is my standard form. Okay. Okay, I know these are hard, but I want you need to do all of the U-tries. You need to try them. Okay. Okay. Example number 2, write an equation in standard form of the line that passes through the points -1, 4 and 1, 1. Okay, so 2 steps. Okay, write it in slope-intercept form. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. And then you transform it into standard form just like we did in example 1, okay? Transform into standard form like in example number 1, okay? So, for slope-intercept form, we need a slope and an intercept, okay? Those are the two things we need. Okay, so to find slope, remember that's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember that's slope. Okay, that gives me my m. So if this is x1, y1, x2, y2, okay, y2 is 1, y1 is 4, x2 is 1, x1 is negative 1. Okay, well 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Okay. And 1 minus negative 1, well, subtracting a negative is the same as adding, so that's 2. So there's my slope. So I have y equals negative 3 halves x plus b. Well, I don't know what that is yet, so I'm going to go ahead and pick 1, 1. Remember, I like to pick my positives. Okay, so I have 1 equals, I'm plugging in an x and a y, just like we did in 5.1. Okay, so plugging in x and y are both going to be 1, so negative 3 halves times 1 plus b. Oops, I'm sorry about that. Okay, and then negative 3 halves times 1, well, that's just negative 3 halves. Okay, and then to solve this, I'm going to have to add 3 halves to both sides. Well, 1 is like the same as 2 over 2. Okay, so if I add 3 over 2 to that, I get 5 over 2. Equals b. Okay, so now I need to take both of those. Y equals negative 3 halves x. So I put my slope in and put my y-intercept in. Okay, now I need to translate it into standard form. So I need to get my x over to the left side. So plus 3 halves x. Okay, so then I'd have 3 over 2x plus y equals 5 over 2. Okay, and then I don't have a negative, so I just need to multiply by the denominator of my fraction, which is, in this case, 2. So 3 over 2 times 2 is just 3, so 3x. 2 times y is 2y. And if you wanted to type 3 over 2 into your calculator and multiply it by 2, that's fine if you can't do that in your head like I can. Okay, and then 5 over 2 times 2 is just 5. So you have 3x plus 2y equals 5. Okay? So that would be your standard form. Okay, go ahead and do the U-try number 2. And then that's it.